You clearly, as far as the documentaries, you sort of focus on the untold stories of sort of the lesser-known Jewish heroes. Yet you did the one that's probably got you much acclaim, Life and Times of Hank Greenberg, who certainly was known. Perhaps maybe the stories were not known, but certainly he's known.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Detroit, and if you grow up in the home of a big baseball fan in Detroit, you would hear about Hank, especially the home of an immigrant Jew. Who my dad, one of the way he learned to become American was to, learn about baseball and instill that in his kids. As a matter of fact, every Yom Kippur we would hear about how Hank hadn't played on Yom Kippur. I thought it was part of Kol Nidra service. It was just something that was part of the religion. So the day I heard he died, I knew I had to do it. But interestingly enough, unless you grew up in a Tigers fan house, or knew Hall of Fame, knew Golden Age of Baseball, or grew up in a Jewish home, he was lesser underknown for the kind of, next Jackie Robinson facing the most discrimination, or, catcalling. I mean, can you imagine going to work every day and having that kind of catcalling? It's just appalling. The other thing about Hank is, there's this image of the Jewish male on the screen, and usually it's the nerd, the nebbish. But for me, Hank Greenberg was the figure I grew up with. This big, strong, brawny guy. So I'm happy to have been able to do that.
Did you ever meet him?
No, I decided to do the film the day he died. And the day after he died, the day I heard that he had died.
Even tracking down some of the interviews you did with Geringer and Neuhauser, what a thrill.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I'm really hoping with being able to re-release the film with even more interviews is I don't think, especially the young people know today about the kind of sacrifice these players made during the golden age of baseball. Hank, Ted, DiMaggio. I mean, it's just amazing how they all went off to war. Feller. And, they're the ones that should have the asterisk saying, they would have the 3,000 hits, but for, fighting in World War II. And they don't make the money like they did today.
Sure.
And they played it because they loved the game.
Right.
And they didn't take steroids. I mean, I remember a kid raising his hand and saying, was Hank Greenberg on steroids? I almost started crying. That's when I decided I got to redo the DVD and package it.
What was the big surprise as you were doing the documentary on Hank Greenberg that you didn't know?
Well, I think there are several things that were surprising. Even though I knew my dad worshipped him, I didn't realize how extensive it was. And in the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community. I didn't realize the kind of adversity he had every day on the field, from the opposing players and to those people in the stands, how politically incorrect those days were, and that people got away with it.
Right.
A good guy he was. We say in Yiddish, a mensch. I mean, he's a really good person. Hal Newsauser says when he first came to play, Hank was there. That's going to be on the new DVD. How beloved he was up from his competitors. I'll have this new interview with Ted Williams. So I think it's interesting to me that you can have that much pressure on you and still remain a good person.
Did you find that...
and how they wore wool uniforms in the summer, especially in Beaumont, Texas. They would like dry out the sweat.
Yeah. As you dig through documentaries, you find that a fact or two that show that he was human. I mean, you kind of put people on a pedestal when you hero worship them, but sort of that...
Well, there's something in terms of his negotiations as a Cleveland Indians exec. He was not very nice to Al Rosen. But I ended The Life and Times of Hank Greenberg with the focusing on the story of Jackie Robinson, because that's what you focus on. But later on, I will, in this new DVD, have Al Rosen's story about how Hank was such a tough negotiator, because you would think he had been more empathetic.
Right.
So and also that he would have played in 35 World Series, but got interviewed because it was on Yom Kippur and his wrist broke.
Yeah.
So those are on DVD, sort of the afterthought revelations.
Yeah. Do you find that as a filmmaker that once you work very hard, you do all the prep work, you do all the film work, and at some point you got to say, enough, I got to get this.
Well, that's what's great about DVDs.
Yeah.
That you can add and add, you know,
Right.
and I overshot, I always overshoot.
Yeah. Do you find, I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday.
Oh, I was also surprised how Briggs was so arbitrary. I mean,
Walter Briggs.
yeah, the owner of the Tigers. It did not make sense. First of all, the basis of him wanting to trade him was he thought he wanted to go to the Yankees. Second of all, you hurt your economic base. I mean, trading him meant less people went to the stadium, and you'll win less games. It's just he should have always been a Tiger. Of course, I wouldn't have had the Jackie Robinson story.
Yeah, well, tell the Jackie Robinson story.
Well, in '47, Hank, the Dodgers were playing the Pirates, and Hank had gone out of his way to be friendly to Jackie. But in going, you know, hitting and going to first base, they ran into each other, and, you know, he befriended him, tried to pick him up, and he said, you know, is there anything I can do? Because obviously he understood about the catcalling. And Jackie said later he was you know, like a prince of a man. So it was just one of those classic great exchanges.
And Briggs decided to trade him to the Pirates.
Well, it was you know, it was a whole collision, not collision. What do you call it when?
Collusion.
Collusion between all the owners back then, that he'd be traded into the National League and a last place team. And it took a lot of doing on Bing Crosby and some of the other owners of the Pirates to, you know, tell Hank. Well, first of all, he was the first $100,000 man.
Right.
You just have to laugh that that's what a player received then. I think that's what they get a minute now.
Yeah, exactly. Why did he ultimately do it? Why did Hank go to the lowly Pittsburgh rinky-dink Pirates?
Well, I think they persuaded them, you know, that, listen, I think he wanted to play one more season. He wasn't mentally finished to play the game. And they gave him all these incentives, the highest salary, they would fly him. He decided to try one more year.
Actually brought in the fence.
Right, and not only that, he also really made Ralph Kiner, you know, helped him with his hitting, which I also didn't have in the film, but I will have in the new DVD.
That's great, because I know Kiner attributes all of that, in fact.
And Hank was his best man the first two weddings, and then he said to Ralph, I'm not going to be your best man.
That's hilarious. Was it hard for Hank to retire?
No, because he also made a great transition into the front office. He and Bill Veeck were the ones to hire the most and first African American players in the American League.
Larry Doby, Satchel Paige, and
right. And I have a little interview with Minnie Minosa.
Oh, you do?
It's Cuban, yeah, for the DVD.
Yeah. Hank was general manager for the Indians for 5 years, 6 years?
Don't have it in my head. And then he was with the Chicago White Sox. And they were the ones that brought Ladies' Day, the scoreboard. Bill Veeck was just great. Someone should do a film on him.
Rec, as in rec. I'm thrilled. This is so much fun for me.
Thank you. You do very well. And I think it's great you're doing it.
Number 5, Hank Greenberg, elected to Baseball's Hall of Fame in 1956. All-Star team in 37, 38, 39, and 40.
Oh, goodbye, Mr. Ball. Goodbye, goodbye. Till the blue has met the dawn up in the sky. When Hank gets home run hit, boy, you're gonna drop a sit. Oh, goodbye, Mr. Hank. Goodbye, oh, Mr. Greenberg. Goodbye, Mr. Hank.